Ashish, can you make Rio the host so that he can share it on Facebook?
Yes, 1 second.
Oh, okay, okay, thank you.
Done, Leo.
Thank you, Ashish.
Yeah,
Can
we'll
we go
start
on?
once it's live on Facebook. Yeah,
Are we
good
ready?
evening. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another session of our webinar series. The series itself is titled The Interdisciplinary Action Research, Conversations with Emerging Leaders. So why these conversations will be a question that most of you may be thinking about. So in a world where the new normal is of masks and physical distancing and work from home, and almost everybody is still adjusting to the lockdowns and containment zones and isolations and quarantines. And we're also noticing that many of our family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances are getting sick and many are recovering. Just everything about us is demanding a fresh, new rethinking. So, this is an opportunity to rethink the world and rethink together for a better world. So, as national and global economies have crashed, and unorganized and informal communities who constitute a majority of the economic population are left grievously impaired, and in this climate of despair, various young researchers and activists have been working on emerging trends in interdisciplinary action research, which address some of the most pressing issues of our times, and that from various sectors, including urban planning, public health, sociology, ecology, environment, livelihoods, digital commons, migration studies, entrepreneurship, informal economy, and so on. So such ideas and explorations, we thought, deserve public focus. And given the post-pandemic situation and the difficulties to meet and discuss such ideas, Center for Financial Accountability and Environment Support Group collaborated to bring to focus various exciting explorations by such young researchers from across India. So in this webinar series, we try and draw attention to such quiet and interdisciplinary efforts by some of our young emerging researchers and leaders through in-depth and engaging conversations. And in the process, we aim to create spaces for interaction between academia, civil society, and also students and the wider public. So these webinars have been happening every Thursday between 5 and 6:30. It has been open to all with prior registration. And today's is the 8th webinar. And today's talk is titled Janapada Khadi, a step towards Swaraj development. Khadi in India is not just a piece of cloth. It conveys timeless sentiments to most of us. Mahatma Gandhi introduced Khadi culture way back in 1920, and it has become an instrument of expression. And at that point, it was also an instrument of expression, especially to boycott the machine-made foreign goods. It also created a vision for a sustained livelihood. And Khadi was kept alive since independence for a very long time, until liberalization made way for mechanization. So despite many efforts by civil society, various challenges have systematically made this unviable and we've very recently heard very horrifying stories of what weaving communities are going through, and where khadi was being sold, many of the stores had to shut down, and horrific stories of no payments and no sales and things like that. So while on the other hand, we discuss climate emergencies and sustainability with such fervor across international government meetings and corporate boardrooms, there is very little that has been done to ensure that this age-old tradition, which is self-sustained, it is not dependent on any form of energy, and provides a great employment opportunity for so many people, this needs attention. So in this current scenario, some of the prime challenges to the growth of the khadi sector in India have been starting from, the growing of cotton itself, which since 2000s, with the introduction of the BT cotton, it has opened a variety of challenges for the farmers and weavers. And there has been lack of access to market. There's been a lot of competition from the machine-made clothes. And the impact of demonetization in 2016 hit this sector pretty hard. And followed by that was the GST on khadi. And also the lack of support for research and development works. And after all of that was the pandemic. And this pandemic has really uh, been very tragic to the entire world, and especially to such sectors. So in this context, Janapada Seva Trust has been doing some amazing work over the last few years. The trust itself was founded in 1960 and is a very interesting story, which I would request Sumanas to share later. And they have been changing that situation for farmers, for weavers, and to the world of khadi. It has been the primary work of a single family now in its third generation. So I don't want to take much of the time of our speakers. So we will hand it over to them. So we're very happy to have Sumanas Koulagi with us, and joining him in the conversation is Raghu GN. So to introduce Sumanas, Sumanas is pursuing his PhD at the University of Sussex in UK, and he has been associated with the Janapada Seva Trust since birth. It must be so beautiful to be growing up in an ambience like that. And intrigued by the concept of social development, an indispensable dynamic of present day existence, he is keen on exploring development as Swaraj, self-rule as proposed by Mahatma Gandhi and J.C. Kumarappa in establishing a non-violent social order. Sumanas is also a naturalist. He has written plenty of articles, and at a very young age, he has won many grants and awards and pursued his research work from the very beginning. Very early, he also traveled across India trying to understand the different kinds of indigenous cotton we have in the country. So we're very pleased to have him. Thank you, Sumanas, for agreeing to be part of this webinar and share your thoughts with us. And then joining him is Raghu, who is who's a founder at Studio for Human Scale Technologies, and he's a co-founder at Bag N Stories. He takes care of the marketing and technology at Janapada Khadi. Raghu is a mechanical engineer who started working on machines as a designer in the automotive industry, but he was keen on developing decentralized technologies at the grassroots levels, which he largely learned in his travel. So he believes that decentralization should pave way for building dignified livelihoods, and his work is also guided by the philosophies of Kumarappa, Gandhi, Schumacher, and others. So we're very pleased to have Raghu as well. So before I hand over the forum to them, some housekeeping rules. We will all keep our microphones on mute and cell phones on silent, and we would encourage questions, comments, feedback in the chat box, and if you want to speak, please do put a key in the chat box or raise your hand, and we will give you a chance to speak as well. The webinar is also being screened live on Facebook. So those of you who would like to share it on your Facebook pages, please do share. So thank you again for joining us, and over to Sumanas. Thank you, Sumanas.
Thank you, Bhargavi, for the wonderful introduction. I don't know what to speak. I've almost told everything that I wanted to say. But I'm very happy to be part of this platform, and because just now I'm finishing off my PhD, and I feel that ESG and the whole platform is something, great opportunity for me to share my ideas and what we're doing at Melkote. First, I just for a few minutes, I would like to sort of say more about myself and my experience of growing in a very Gandhian atmosphere, and then sort of moving on to the Janapada Seva Trust, what we do here on ground. So let me start with basically, I come from a very Gandhian background, as you said, and I'm sort of homeschooled till my son's standard, and I was just growing vegetables and being in farm and going to the forest and spending time with birds and butterflies. So this was my childhood, and I really enjoyed that phase of my life, and also growing up in something associated with the organization really gave a lot of opportunity for me to meet so many different people from different backgrounds, from activists to environmentalists, from naturalists to artists. So in a way, it was really, a wonderful experience for me in my childhood days. And also, on the other hand, just growing up in this sort of atmosphere, very much of Gandhian ideas, it was also to some extent overdose of Gandhi. And till almost my undergraduate level, I was always wondered, what my grandparents and my parents are doing in Melkote. Is a lot of times it's very irrelevant. And I was just thinking, in the age of computers, why they talk about, doing hands-on work, doing or using charkas and all these sort of things. And but I was very much passionate about wildlife, and so that's why I pursued my undergraduate in biological sciences, and then went to Oxford for my master's in wildlife conservation. And that's where I started realizing the larger picture, because till then I was just thinking just saving a forest is enough for everything. It's a solution for all the crises that we have. But when I went to the Oxford, when I started learning so many things, I realized that our lifestyle is so much interlinked to the larger issues that we are seeing in the world today. And so through that, especially sort of the questions like how I could save my bird, how I could save my plant. So these are sort of fundamental questions that actually pushed me back to Gandhi in a way. By actually sort of questioning Gandhi, I came closer to Gandhi. So this is something my journey. I've never sort of accepted Gandhi and Gandhian ideas, what my my family and the organization is doing blindly. It's always questioning their ideas. That's how I've grown up, and that's how I have come closer to Gandhi, I would say. And so this is about myself, and currently I'm sort of about to finish my work, my PhD work, and my my PhD is largely revolves around Swaraj, the idea of Swaraj, which was central to Gandhian ideas. And I'm looking at what extent it basically if we move towards Swaraj development, we could actually resolve these problems of environment crisis, and also largely the social inequality. So this is what I'm sort of doing in my PhD work. And now I would like to sort of sort of move on to the organization that we're doing here, what the work that we are doing here. As you said, Janapada Seva Trust started in 1960s by my grandparents, and my grandfather was secretary for Jayaprakash Narayan, and he has come from had come from a very traditional Gandhian sense, and so he settled in Melkote in 1960s. And since then, almost from last 60 years, we have survived, and we are working with communities around here. And I think, just surviving for almost like this long years, like 50, 60 years itself is a huge achievement, if you consider the time scale of NGOs or voluntary organizations like us. And one thing I find, very interesting about the organization itself is that we have kept it very small, consciously we have kept it small. And even, many friends who have been with us from last 40, 50 years, even when they visit us, they say that, still a lot of things are just the same. In terms of infrastructure and all this sort of in a physical sense, in a material sense, but largely in terms of our intellectual work, or in terms of what we are doing, the activities that we are working with people has actually sort of changed over the years. And the organization itself has never worked like an NGO, the usual NGOs, which actually largely driven by projects and dictated by the funding agencies. So here, in our case, it's the other way around. It's always about the need of the local landscape and the need of the local community, and accordingly, we have been sort of changing our work. And whenever we found our work is irrelevant, we have stopped it and moved on to something which is more meaningful. So that's how we have survived over last 60 years, and from last 60 years we have built successfully, we have built a huge network of people, and they have been sort of supporting us in all the projects that we're doing. So this is about broadly about Janapada Seva Trust. And from over the last 6 years, we have worked on various issues, from physically challenged children to farming, organic farming, to the Khadi activities that we're doing right now. So these are all, as situation is changing over the years, we have actually changed our activities too. And currently we have like 3-4 projects going on. So one is that the Khadi activity, where we produce natural dyed handspun and hand woven fabrics. And we have another project which is of adoption center, where we get 1 day to 5 years old abandoned babies from our district, and we give adoption for the suitable parents. And apart from this, we have another project called Nenebana, where we are trying to sort of regrow a forest, and it's almost like 10 acres of landscape. So that's another project. And we have a place called Hosajivanadari, where we do a lot of education programs, largely focused on environment, development issues, and lifestyle. So this is broadly about the organization and the history of last 60 years. And now I would like to sort of move on to the main theme of this whole talk, which is of Janapada Khadi. I was just wondering whether you all see the slides. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, all right. So here, Janapada Khadi is I myself have been closely involved with, and the one of the key thing before sort of I move on to it's very important to understand what drives us, what pursue what we are doing. So for this, for the whole Khadi activity and the whole organization, conception of Gandhi is something very central. So in a very in a short, I want to Swaraj, everyone can have control over their life. And in other words, it's a completely a non-violent society where it's completely devoid of exploitation, not only human beings and also non-human beings. So this is broadly the idea, and that's what driving us. And the Khadi is something very small way we have tried this to bring the whole idea into reality. So Janapada Khadi, as you said, Khadi has its own history. Khadi, for Gandhi and Kumarappa, Khadi was establishing the Swaraj development or establishing Swaraj. But after independence, the whole the course of khadi sector got changed, especially after government taking over, the state taking over the whole khadi sector. And today, we have reached a point where without the permission of Khadi and Village Industries Commission or the state, it's impossible to use. You can't do what Gandhi had envisioned. So so today, what the Khadi activity that we're doing, even though we're recognized by Khadi and Village Industries Commission, so we don't take any sort of subsidies, or we don't take any sort of financial support from the government, and it's completely people supported. And the idea is that we really want to make this as a run based on the idea of Swaraj, which was the original idea of Khadi. And and more importantly, the whole Khadi activity that we're doing here is human centered, which is completely contrary to the modern production systems. Because in modern production systems, the focus becomes on material, what people produce, rather than the producers. But here it's completely opposite. Here, our focus is actually on the producers and their life and their happiness and their freedom. So that is the priority, and we see the fabric that we produce as something, as a byproduct of this human relation. So that is one of the main difference between Janapada Khadi and other prevailing production systems. And the other important aspect that we have tried out is that the scale is something we have found over the years is something very, very important. As I said, not just only for the organization, but also for the enterprise itself. We believe that there is an optimum scale. And so there is a very, very interesting called Human Scale. I always keep on, in many of my talks, I've been sort of suggesting this book. So there's a book called Human Scale, where it's by Kirkpatrick Sale. So he talks about scale, how scale is important for every activity, and if anything, any activity bigger than an optimum limit, so inefficiency starts in the whole system and finally it collapses. And for this he gives a lot of evidence, and interestingly he comes up with a number for the enterprises. So that number is about 30 to 50 people. So according to him, any enterprise, if it becomes bigger than the 40 or 50 people, so people start people start feeling they're powerless. The whole democratic atmosphere at the enterprise actually it goes down. So that is the one reason why we have consciously kept it small. We have consciously kept it below 30 people. And another important aspect is that we take all the decisions unanimously. So that is another important aspect. It's not like a majority in decision making the whole enterprise. And apart from this, we have also another interesting aspect of our Khadi activity is that we have fixed the maximum limit on production. So if you go and see any production systems, usually they will like targets for people, they have to produce this much in a day. But here in our case, we have fixed the maximum, people are not allowed to work more than certain amount. So the whole enterprise, who are part of this whole enterprise, they're not allowed to work more than 6 hours a day. And at the same time, we have made sure that everybody earns a living wage of 300 rupees. That's what per day. So that's what we have unanimously have agreed for. And so this has really helped all our workers and who are part of this whole enterprise, because now they have more control over their life. They know how many hours they have to work in a whole month. And so accordingly they could actually plan their larger life. And since there is a limit, the people who are working with us, they are not, have not ended up in this vicious circle of, have to produce more and earn more. So this is never ending process. So because we have, since we have this set, we have this own, self limit on production. So people have more control and they know how many hours of work they have to, do in a month's time. And rest in remaining time, they involve in other activities. For example, we have regular exposure. We have regular reading groups for them, and they go for exposure trips once in a year. And we do regular group reading sessions, and apart from that, we do regular potluck and also we have this regular prayer meetings with them. And it's in a way, we have really sort of trying to give a space where actually, everyone can exercise not only the physical labor, but also intellectual labor. So this is broadly what we are, trying to achieve through all these things. And apart from this, another important step that we have taken in last year is that we are actually in our workers to be part of the owner, our workers to become the owners of the whole enterprise. So that is a major step that we have taken. So what we have done is that, one third of the investment is actually invested by the workers themselves. So that's why, the people who are working with us, they are not just mere, laborers. Something, the major step that we have achieved in last 2 years, I would say. And apart from this, the couple of other things that we have done is that we have set up a health fund for our workers, where one part of the profit goes for this health fund, and it is actually utilized by our people who are part of the enterprise. And also we have set up this provident fund as a social security for them. So these are all different things that we have tried out. And because of all these sort of institutional innovations that we have tried out in last couple of years, have actually sort of created an atmosphere where individuals have more control over their life. So this is broadly what Gandhi and Kumarappa was envisioned for, having a more control over their life. So that's what they conceptualized as Swaraj. And in a small way, to some extent, we have achieved that. Not completely, but at least we are moving in that direction. So this is something I wanted to share about Janapada Khadi. And the consequence, the other thing, what drives us, not just only apart from this Swaraj, the other important aspect, as you said, today the biggest crisis that we are seeing is of environment. So a lot of reports are saying, by 2050, it is, there is a whole lot of chances that we may not be able to survive on this earth. So, and at the same time, there's a whole lot of social inequality is actually increasing, and where, rich people is becoming richer and poor is becoming poorer. And for all these, for all these crises, we find Swaraj and Khadi as a solution. Because for example, if you take the example of a Khadi activity, which is largely centered around need any sort of an external energy source to run the whole production. And fortunately, in the whole energy debate today, we don't talk about human energy, which is abundantly available, accessed by a whole lot of, think of solar and wind and all these sort of things, but we don't actually consider human labor as something, as an energy source. So here, we believe that human energy itself is something very important to resolve this whole environmental crisis, because the whole environmental impact of this kind of production becomes very, very minimum. So if you compare it to power loom, for example, which runs on electricity. And apart from this, as you said, since it is based on human energy or human labor, it gives a whole lot of opportunities for people to get employed. For example, if someone buys our Khadi product, so they will be supporting at least a dozen livelihoods behind it, because there are so many people are involved in the whole supply chain. And and apart from that, the investment cost for this sort of human energy based livelihoods is comparatively lower, if you compare with the mechanized production systems. So for example, in handloom today, you could actually have your own handloom for about 15 to 20,000 rupees. But if you want something, a machine for power loom, for example, which runs on electricity, people have to pay more than 2 lakh rupees or 3 lakh rupees today. So if you see this in context, and a lot of people actually can stand on their feet by choosing handloom sector or choosing handloom. But on the other case, for example, if you take power looms, it's not actually affordable for many people. So whoever has money, they can only invest in the enterprise, and they become the owner, and all other people who don't have affordable capacity or capacity to afford, so they become the wage laborers. So in a way, khadi has actually sort of to some extent we have managed to break this relationship of owner and wage workers. So by doing so, it's actually this kind of production systems actually distributes wealth in the production stage itself. You don't need to produce wealth and then have to distribute. So since here, a lot of people can actually, take up their own work. So the wealth, actually becomes distributed in the production stage itself. So this is something, to some extent can act as a solution for the inequality that we are seeing in the society today. So these are all, some of the important, things that we have tried out in last couple of years. And these are all, some of the pictures that I wanted to share. So the first, the left corner picture is from one of the drama. They not only our weavers and our dyers and all of our people are actually, were actually involved in that. And the top right corner for picture is actually, all our weavers. So this is what recently we launched a website, the online, e-commerce website for our Janapada Khadi. And these pictures, for because we wanted few pictures to put up on our website. So what we thought was, instead of asking some people from urban centers to come here and wear our fabrics and saris, and we asked our weavers themselves to wear what they had produced. So this had actually sort of remarkable impact, not just only on how they had on their understanding of khadi, because always they had thought that this material what they produce is, they are always thought that it's not for them, it's only for the urban elites, because it's many times it's not affordable for them. So but after seeing themselves on these pictures, wearing the khadi saris and the tops they had actually produced, and a lot of perspective actually got changed. Voluntarily they started buying one or two saris every year. And they also sort of it really helped us to sort of increase their self-respect and the respect for what were there, for respect for their work. And they started feeling that they also look good wearing khadi. So this is something that I found very fascinating in last couple of years. And apart from that, the picture which is on the bottom left, it's from last year. We had actually gone for a exposure trip to North Karnataka to meet traditional weavers over there. And these sort of exposure trips, I could see lot have capacity to change their perspectives, because always a lot of people, a lot of our workers had even though they were earning living wages, even though they were earning 8 to 10,000 rupees a month, they had this in mind that what they're earning is actually quite less. But when they went and saw other people, other weavers, so especially their horrible conditions, they started appreciating what we have here. Because in North Karnataka, the traditional weavers, they would almost like almost 3 to 4 people will be working, and they'll be earning almost like 5 to 6,000 rupees a month. So these sort of conditions and sort of meeting people outside their usual place, so had really sort of changed their perspectives. And the bottom right corner is about the other step that we are trying to do, is that always when we talk about the fabrics, a lot of times there be expertise designers, they give designs, and the artisans just only do what they say. But in our case, we are really trying our workers themselves to become the weaver, become the designers. So we often have this sort of workshops where they learn about designs and how how beautifully they could actually design what they produce. So these are all various activities in a very small way we have tried out with a small number of people. And lastly, I would like to say that, one thing that have one thing that made us achieve all these things is the institutional innovation. So if you compare with other Gandhian institutions or other institutions, so lot of times you have a sense of like they're dead. So that's why one of the main reasons, including the Charaka today, why they're in crisis, because the whole institutional innovation has not happened over the last 25 years. So like this, having this institutional innovation at the center, and keeping Swaraj as something, as a driving force. So these are all something that we have have able to achieve in last couple of years. So this is what I wanted to share. And the next few slides, I would like to hand it over to Raghu. So he will yeah, take it forward.
Thank you, Sumanas. Yes, Raghu.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Yeah, rather than picking up where Sumanas has left, I'd like to start with me, and then slowly come to the point where Sumanas had left. So, so um, uh, I'm graduated as a mechanical engineer. So before I graduated as mechanical engineer, I met Sumanas in my 12th, and we became friends. And then he introduced me to Janapada Seva Trust and their ways, and I was keep volunteering there in the work that was happening there. And after I graduated as a mechanical engineer and I worked in some of the industries, I started relating the work that I was doing and what's really need to be done out there, and then started comparing, or keeping the standards that I had learned from Janapada Seva Trust in my work, and then started measuring with it with the today's crisis and everything. I understood that there is thirsting need for technology out there for in rural implementations and stuff like that. So after I quit my job and I started traveling with Sumanas across different in India, and after that I also started working with Silco Foundation, looking after their textile department, working with their textile department, working with weavers, spinners all across India, silk spinners, cotton spinners, and everything. And I explored more and more issues, and explored more and more solutions, or ways of thinking, design thinking and stuff like that. And so more I worked on it, and I understood more about it. And finally, through other other books, like Sumanas has mentioned before in this workshop, Human Scale. When I was going through that book, I strongly related the human scale in the technology itself. People, we have crossed the very small line between automation and tools and machines, right? So I started understanding that the scale plays a huge part in whatever we design or operate today. Keeping that in mind, and also the problems that we face today in mind, I with Janapada Seva Trust, I started working on something called a Studio for Human Scale Technologies. In Studio for Human Scale Technologies, I'd like to talk about that at the end of that, but right now I'll move on to the where Sumanas has left out. So in Studio for Human Scale Technology, I work on some of the projects, and one of the project I very strongly or very rigorously working on is working on the value chain of the whole cotton industry. Yeah, cotton being one of the biggest commercial crop in India, it has the highest farmers death rates, or all of these things attached to it, like highest pesticides. 50% of the pesticides produced used in entire India is used for the cotton itself. So all of these things are there. Could you please move on to the next slide? Yeah. So how all of this started is because is very, very long ago when the Industrial Revolution happened. Europeans are looking to produce, procure cotton. They had their set up their entire empire of cotton in Europe, and they wanted cotton which they didn't get from USA, and so they moved on. And they started looking into the cottons that we have. We had several varieties of cotton. Those say they took all of different type of cotton. They tested with their machines. Because of the staple length or the design of their machines, they couldn't process their our cotton, the landscape cotton. So they started implementing the American cotton, and GMO and all of hybrid cotton. All of these things came with this cotton. The problems came, like pesticides needed this for this cotton, and also fertilizers was needed for this cotton. And then um, farmers started losing seed sovereignty and all of these things, and this created a huge problem, because for small and marginal farmers, they either couldn't grow. Right now also it's the same problem, that the small and marginal farmers, they can't grow this GMO or hybrid cotton because it needs lot of capital input, even to buy seeds, and then pesticides, and then fertilizers. They need to have irrigation system, all of these things. And then they can't even grow the landscape cotton, because the landscape, even if they grow it, there is nowhere to sell. There are no people to buy it. So these small and marginal farmers, even the big farmers, but to talk about the small farmers, even these small farmers, they couldn't do either that or this, which they had been doing for very long time. So this created a huge problem, and these farmers, or the people who after depended on the farmers, like after the value addition of the cotton, all of these people started moving into cities, and the problem we know are exist today. So this is one of the problem that I understood while I was working with Silco Foundation and Janapada Seva Trust, and to my journey and everything. And so I started looking into the technology that is required to support these people, or to support this work. And when I learned, I learned that when I researched, I learned that a lot of people had thought about it and tried to work on it, but really did not succeed, because when we try to compare with today's economy, with all of these problems and issues, that is the machines, or the capacity at which it runs, it doesn't really works out, because because of the the mainstream technology produces at a very lower cost, and all of these things. So I also understood that if we try to work in a rather than working in the mainstream, if we could work around the problem, it will be better, like trying to reach out, trying to help them grow desi cotton and then process it, if the desi cotton means landscape cotton, and then those landscape cotton can produce an organic fabric, and all of these things going to support what do you say, become khadi or anything like that. So mainstream providing a solution to the mainstreams, this thing is not going to help. So I started looking into the problem. Then one of the I started working on the cotton pre-processing machines. After cotton has been picked, it goes through several processes, like ginning, and then it becomes carding, drawing, rowing, and stuff like that. And this all happens in a very centralized manner today, especially in central sliver plants, something called a central sliver plants set up across India. And then from that, it will come out as a sliver, and then moves out to the spinning factories, where it becomes yarn, and then to power looms and hand looms and all. So if we can able to set up these technology, it could be a machine, or it could be a tool, or anything, which if we can be able to make these machines or tools that can process the cotton after picking to all the way to the yarn at a scale, at a scale it is more reachable, at human scale. At a scale, it can support 5 farmers, or at a scale it can run a weaving unit, or it can run a spinning unit, or it can support a weaving community or a spinning community or something like that. And that could be filling the gap through giving the solution through filling the gaps could be the solution. So that's something that I work through human scale technologies. While I work with the human scale technologies, some of the key things that I keep in doing these machines or tools, because it's very important for us. Usually we now look over things like automation and stuff like that, and when we are thinking efficiency or capacity in mind, and that how handloom became powerloom and it's finally killing handloom. So it's very important to look at certain things while we design any kind of technology, especially for rural implementation or actual handwork. So some of the things that we keep very strongly in human scale technologies are controlled by artisans. Like the technology that we produce should be able to should not dictate whoever uses it. Rather, the person who uses it should be the dictator for the tool or the machine that we make, and it should be low cost so that more people can afford. And it should give creative space at work. It means it should give the flexibility for the weavers or the spinners or artisans or whoever uses this machine. It should be able to give the flexibility for them to be more skillful, to apply their skill and to be more creative with it. And then it has to be locally maintainable, that like it shouldn't be something that it can only be opened with a code or something. It should be more like you could take it to a nearest welding shop and get it fixed and something like that, so that they don't have to depend on someone has to come from a city, a closest city, to repair it or anything. And it of course it has to be efficient in the manner that it should be more easy to operate, rather through with hands or with motors or anything. And then it has to enhance the freedom of the artisans. These are some of the key objectives that we keep while we design any technology through Studio for Human Scale Technologies. Yeah, I think that's about it. And yeah, if anyone has any question, you can pose now, I guess.
Yeah, so thank you, Raghu, and it was interesting to understand your journey too in this endeavor. I was wondering if Sumanas can also explain some of the initiatives that have been taken, especially to bring back the lost ways in which even yarns were made, the weaving techniques themselves, and how Janapada Seva Trust has gone to ensure that the youth are brought back into this, because we know that many people are had left their hometowns in search of jobs to cities. Whereas here now you've created this possibility that you're building dignity in them to stay back in their towns, continue with this work. And the many lost techniques that you all have tried in putting it back there. So if you can also share some of that.
Yeah, Bhargavi. So as you said, today living in a rural space itself has become very undignified thing to do. So a lot of times, because of the whole modern education, we feel that doing some sort of an hands-on work, doing a physical labor, is seen as something inferior to the intellectual labor. So that is one of the reasons why people like to sort of move away from the rural spaces. And as you rightly mentioned, there are a whole lot of challenges to sort of sustain these sort of activities. It is not that easy because always the idea of good life they see, and also it's bombarded every day through various means. Is city as something as superior space to live in. So that's why even though the Melkote town where we work here, even though this town is traditionally a weaver's place, so hardly today, there are hardly few 4-5 weavers are left in the whole town. So almost if you had come here, like 30 years back, you used to hear the whole, the weaving sound throughout the town. But today it's replaced by the auto rickshaws and buses and cars. So you could see the transition, where we have actually have shifted over last 30 years. And so one of the couple of things that had actually helped us is that if you closely sort of observe the rural India, there is a small section of section is actually emerging. So that section is like they don't they can't actually they don't have capacity to work in the farming sector. They can't work under the sun. So they are looking for something which they can actually do inside a house or in under the shade. And at the same time they don't have capacity to move completely to the urban center and get some a job. So especially in the place like Melkote and nearby villages, I could see that sort of a small population is emerging, especially women, where they have gone till 10th standard or high school, and they aspire for something, some occupation in urban centers, but a lot of times they fail to get those sort of occupations. And at the same time they can't actually go and work at the farm. So they're actually looking for this sort of a space where they could actually do or perform work, something which inside a house. And these sort of population is actually coming into our khadi activity, and they feel that they see this as something better work than working in a farm. And and apart from that, it's always challenging, because whatever we are trying here with them is completely opposite to what the world is moving towards. And so that's why one of the main reasons why we have managed to retain them here is that we have keep on giving them very positive feedback. Not only us, a lot of visitors who visit us, they always appreciate their work. So that appreciation itself a lot of times gives them self-respect in what they're doing. So a lot of times, not only here, recently one of our youngest viewers, Suman, he went and he gave a talk for Gandhi Jayanti in a nearby town, and it was actually appreciated by a lot of people. And these sort of positive feedbacks really helps people to continue their work, especially this sort of work which involves physical labor. And also, as I said, the small initiatives like the asking them to become the models for for the khadi what we make. So that actually created a lot of very positive impact on themselves. And yeah, so basically I see this sort of making sure that they understand their work, not just only the skills but also the larger perspective. That's what we've been trying to sort of work with them, because we always keep on telling them that what they're doing is not just only the weaving, but they need to understand the larger picture, why it is so important today to continue this sort of occupations in the context of environment, in the context of social crisis. So in a way, in a very small sense, I would say that we have successfully managed to get those sort of positive feedback from different people from across different sections of society. So that really helped us to sort of retain more younger generation in these sort of occupations.
Uh, and thank you, Sumanas. And in terms of the cost of one of those weaving units, how expensive is it?
It's as I said, if it's the khadi is not, it's completely different from handloom sector. Handloom sector uses mill spun yarn and they hand weave it. So that is completely a very different system. Since here it's a khadi is a hand spun and hand woven, it gives more people are involved in the whole production system. And since it's a hand spun yarn, the quality of the yarn completely depends on the spinners who does it. So that's why you won't get a very even yarn, and that itself is the unique feature of the khadi itself. And since the quality is not very even, so there are a whole lot of other process you need to do before weaving. For example, we have a process called starching, where you treat the yarn with starch, so that gives strength to the yarn, and and then you have to weave. And so since it involves lot more processes, so it's a lot of times it's not just easy to start a khadi activity. as such. So you need at least a group of people to start this. And the cost, in cost wise, if you ask me, for that, we have about 10 looms right now. We have about 10 weavers, and for this we need at least about the investment that we have right now is about 5 to 10 lakh rupees, I would say. So that is the investment, and almost like 25 to 30 people are occupied in the whole in different phases of the whole enterprise. And if you compare this with the other the modern production systems where the expenditure is our investment cost is very high, and the employment what they get out of those systems is very less. And yeah, so this is
Yeah.
my answer.
And so my next question is, so tomorrow if somebody wants to learn how to weave, how long will it take for a person to sit on the loom and learn the entire process? Because there is also it's not just a mechanical thing. There is also a lot of math involved in the design and things like that, in changing the threads and all that. So how long will it take for a person to be able to?
So here, a lot of times, when new person joins the team, so it takes about anywhere between 2 to 3 months just to get that speed of the cord. And but a lot of times, when people come and see the loom, they see a lot of times the first impression they get is that they can't do this because there are so many threads involved in it, and they find it as so complicated. But once they patiently they sit and start weaving, so usually they get the skill in about 3 weeks or something, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And then to get the speed you need at least 2 to 3 months.
Okay. So in that, has there been any changes that you all have adopted with Raghu's inputs to make something easy? Or
Yeah, one of the thing was that there is a process called warping. So that is the vertical threads on the loom that you see. That vertical threads, the warping process is also hand operated in khadi activity. So for that, we used to have this old machineries which was not very efficient enough. And Raghu, after Raghu joined the team, so he managed to sort of come up with improved warping machine, which is still hand operated, but it is much way more efficient. And this is one thing. And also now he's working on looms to improve that looms. So the idea is that we really like to keep this human energy element is intact in the whole process, but at the same time maximize the efficiency. So yeah. And also, as Raghu pointed out, right, now he's working on this sort of pre-processing machines, which is something we feel very, very important today, because even though it's ours is completely an independent entity, still we are dependent on the state or the government for our raw material. For example, as Raghu mentioned, today we have the central sliver plants, which actually processes cotton into the slivers. So which is prior process to the spinning, hand spinning process. And today we are dependent on this sort of a very capital intensive large setup. And it's very impossible for us to experiment with, because today a lot of people are trying to grow the short staple cotton, which is native to India, as an alternate to the GMO cotton and hybrid cotton varieties. But the bottleneck is that there is no machines available for them to process it. So that's where what Raghu is doing becomes very, very relevant, because that really in a way gives farmers a more bargaining power, because using these machines the farmers can actually have their own units, because with the costing that we are thinking is about 4 to 5 lakh rupees. And if they have these machines, like 2 or 3 farmers or farmers cooperative can own these machines, they could actually process the cotton and take it till the yarn stage. So that really helps them to gives them a bargaining power, because today when they grow cotton they can't store it for a long time, they have to sell it off. So they're the mill owners, which is very capital intensive production systems. What they do is that basically they wait till the farmers forcibly give out their cotton. So that's why, the input cost is actually increasing because of the pesticide use and irrigation and all these things. But on the other hand, they don't have, bargaining power in deciding the prices. So these machines, what Raghu is working on would actually, help the farmers to, get those bargaining powers. And also, since it is a very small scale, we could actually, use different cottons, because India had very different, various short staple cotton varieties. And these, each cotton varieties has its own textures. So that's why, if you use different cotton varieties, you get different, textured fabrics. So today, because we have this large setup, we have actually, lost this fabric diversity also, not only the cotton diversity, but also the fabric. So these machines actually, helps for the weaving community to, come up with different fabrics with different textures. And so like this, Raghu's contribution is something remarkable in our whole journey.
Yeah. So there is a question from Ashwin. So he says Khadi and handloom is more expensive than mass-produced powerloom clothes. So, because of this, it's mostly the elite who use it. So how can we work towards making Khadi affordable for all?
Oh, that is actually impossible, because there is always, it's especially when we talk about Gandhian ideas or Khadi. So we should understand that there is something which is called normative. So that normative idea is like a direction for, for us to move forward. And when I talk about Swaraj, it's a normative goal. It doesn't mean that, we can achieve it completely in next few years. So it's always, and so one thing that we really have to sort of, always keep in mind, especially when we talk about Gandhi, is that, his understanding of means and end. So he always, he was very clear that, as individuals, we have more control over means and nothing over the end. So that, that understanding is something very, very important. So as individuals, especially for us, so that is something very fundamental. We always, try to enjoy the whole process rather than, thinking, how we could sort of expand this, or how we could make the whole world afford Khadi. So because it doesn't work like that, because it's just so complicated, because a lot of people, as I was giving examples, our weavers themselves, they don't have purchasing power, to afford these sort of fabrics. And it has happened because the social condition is like that. Today the whole capital accumulation is accumulated with this one section of the society. And to make people, the ordinary people, to buy this, the only way is to make sure that, we actually make this, rich people pay for all these things. And through that, we could actually, enhance the purchasing power of the ordinary people. So that I could see in last, couple of years, because when we started 10 years back, the very actively the Khadi activity. So our weavers were not at all, in a position to purchase what they had actually produced. But today, at least, because since we're reaching out to the high-end market, and we're somehow, convincing them to, sort of, it's in a way percolate, the whole money is percolating from the top section to the lower. And this has actually, has increased their purchasing power. And today they have reached a position where, at least, instead of, using the Khadi for their whole year, they at least have few sets of Khadi fabrics in their home today. So in a way, I would see this as something, as a, step towards, making Khadi affordable for the ordinary people. So the first thing is to make sure that, this rich people buy this, and through that, the ordinary people get the purchasing power. So that's my response.
From marketing point of view, I'd like to add to what Sumanas was saying. Yeah, I mean, for a certain level, it's not going to be possible to make people, make everyone afford. But as when we compare it to the other products out there, or other fabrics and all, it's not that expensive. I mean, when you look at it, it looks expensive because other people who are not being able to afford it are being marketed. I mean, they are sold. I mean, the consumeristic idea of what we see today is very wrong. I mean, rather than consuming 3 shirts of 400 rupees, I'd rather buy 1 shirt of 1,200 rupees of khadi, and decreasing how much we consume and everything. And this could kind of make people buy more khadi rather than buying 3 shirts of 400 rupees, which is made in mill and with synthetic dyes and all of these things. I mean, that could be one thing. Why they would rather buy 3 shirts of 400 rupees is because of our infomercials and commercials, all this televisions, and how they are marketed and everything. And also Sumanas was saying the idea of the city that they see in the films or in the televisions every day had made them to purchase, go to those options rather than purchasing khadi. That could be one thing. I mean, that's what khadi stands for. And if everyone could understand that, that would be the way they can afford the khadi.
And another thing I just want to add on this is that as consumers today, we have a huge responsibility, because a lot of times what a society produces is depends on what we consume. And because as consumers today, we should not just see this a consumption not just as something, a material transaction, but also something which is moral. So that's what Gandhi and Kumarappa was saying, because today every time when we buy something in the market, we just buy it because it's cheap, or whether we just like it. But we don't consider the larger issues behind the production. So for example, when you go and buy the branded garments from Zara and other brands. So a lot of times, if you trace back, how these things are being produced, it's being produced in a very horrific conditions, in a very exploitative conditions. So a lot of times they are actually, produced in Dhaka and such places where a lot of rapes happens every day, and they don't even pay for, living wages for them. So in between these sort of conditions, our branded garments actually being produced. So when you buy these sort of things, sitting somewhere in Mumbai or in Delhi or in Bangalore, so you indirectly you would be supporting this sort of exploitative system somewhere else. So that's why making this moral connection is something very, very important. So that's why Gandhi and Kumarappa was always pressing for something local consumption, because that's the only way how one could actually lead an ethical life, because that's the only way how you could go and cross check whether in what conditions the products are being produced. And so I feel that as consumers, it's really the time for us to think on these lines.
Yeah, and thank you for that explanation and bringing examples from across the world of what is happening to, commodified garment industries. So there is a question, not a question.
Yeah, Kamir from Gatit from Kamir. I saw he has
Yeah.
sent.
Would you
Thank
like
you,
to?
Gatit.
Gatit yeah.
Yeah, Gatit is a very good friend of mine, and
Okay.
I've been working with Gatit for a while now. I've been to Kamir and everything. Yeah, I mean Gatit. I mean Kamir has always been very supportive, and they always wanted to try out. And of course, as soon as we come to the field test, I'd like to work with Kamir and also with Janapada Trust. Yeah, I'll reach out to Kamir as Gatit as well.
Okay. And Ayush says, if khadi is mass produced, will it still be sustainable with current technology? And what will happen to the 100-mile community, which Ila Bhatt writes about? Should we even think about scaling it up with the help of machines?
Before Sumanas adds
Yeah.
anything, I'll just want to say that rather than scaling it up, we need to think about replicating it. If that's what human scale is all about. Making more Janapada Khadi rather than 50 people weave in Janapada Khadi, making 10 more Janapada Khadi to work at different places makes more sense. I mean, that could be the way to do it if we are thinking it to make it mass produced. I mean, but rather than say it mass produced, as Kumarappa says, produced by the mass.
I think Raghu has answered. I don't need to add anything to that.
So in the current context of what we are all seeing around, do you think that there is a possibility that we can restart this in many of the towns and villages around. For example, Kollegal was a place where there was a lot of weaving happening. It has shut down. We have seen similar things happening in Chelkere, where of course they were weaving blankets, but it has all it came to a close because of the kind of projects that came there. So now with the pandemic and this whole rethinking that we need to look forward for a better world, do you think that there are possibilities that youth will reach out to you and say, hey, this is something that is fascinating, can we start? And do you think there are such possibilities?
Yeah, there are these sort of possibilities, because we have been sort of, for example, in our case, almost like 1.5 years back, one of our friends called Shivaguru, he had called from, he called us from Chennai, and he said that he was actually, from a traditional weavers community, and he wants to revive that. Now he has, got bored with the usual city life, and he wants to go back and settle in his village, and he wanted to learn the weaving. And that's how he came here, and he learned the process, and now he has started his own enterprise, and in the brand name called Nurupu. So now he has about 6 to 7 weavers with him. And similarly, one of our friends, from Srirangpatna, nearby town, so they had actually, he worked with us for almost 1 year, and now he has gone back, and he's working with one of the weaving cooperative near his town. And now at the moment we have another person from Tamil Nadu. So he's also from weavers community, and he wants to go back and revive something in his house, in his place. And so he's with us from last 3-4 months. So I see a lot of possibilities, and actually people are reaching out, as you said. And definitely I think this is the time for us to sort of rethink on these lines.
Yeah. And also thinking about the next generation, given that, the pandemic has also shut down schools, and for the many years over the last 4-5 decades, the kind of art and craft that we've all been taught in school is so different, and it is far away from building life skills in children. So is there a possibility that we can introduce this as one of the mandatory projects in school? Because there is a school here in Bangalore which has, the last 4-5 years, they've been having a weaving unit where children are learning weaving as part of the school activity. Do you think that can be introduced in government schools and various other schools where there is such possibilities? And have there been such initiatives?
Would you like to answer, or I can respond? Okay. Definitely, that is one possibility that we have to look at. But more than that, I think it's time for us to sort of redefine the idea of knowledge itself. The definition of knowledge itself, because we always think that knowledge is actually is gained through the schooling system. So that is not true. I think this is a time for us to get out of that assumption. And we should consider the agriculture, or we should consider weaving itself as an equally important knowledge. So if you see from this lens, everything, for example, just digging something on your farm, or vermicomposting, or weaving, so this becomes possibilities, and their parents and the local community itself can become the teachers for the children. And I think that this is something we should look at more than just only mere introducing this to the schools. But definitely that's a one step to go for. But beyond that, I think we should think of considering this sort of occupations and the related knowledge itself as something equally important. And that change in perspective really helps to revive all these things. Yeah.
Thank you. Raghu, you want to add more to that? You have to unmute.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
Okay. And in terms of what should I say? Going back to the desi cotton varieties, the indigenous cotton varieties, it'll be good if you can throw some light as to what's happening there, because I guess you've done a great study on it. A little bit about that, and are there initiatives now that again the youth are conscious about it and doing something in? What are the initiatives to
So this
hold
question
on
is
to
to
our?
me or to
Yeah,
Raghu? I
yeah.
don't know.
No, to you, to you.
Okay. Uh, as Raghu was pointing out, today there are a lot of people are thinking of growing desi cotton varieties because it's a pest resistant. So that is one of the main reasons why today we are using more than 50% of the pesticide in cotton crop. And but definitely the bottleneck, as I said, today, even though people are willing to grow the local desi cotton varieties, the bottleneck is the processing machines, because today we have this huge setups which is built for long staple cotton, which is hybrid cotton varieties and bt cotton, and you can't really have small quantity and process it in these huge setups, and a lot of times the wastage will be very significant, because it's actually designed for long staple cotton. So I think even if we see, definitely the desi cotton, growing desi cotton is an alternate for the whole, or the solution for the whole cotton crisis that we have today. But unless we have these machines, small scale decentralized machines where farmers themselves can own it, so we are never going to solve this problem. So that is my perspective. Yeah.
Thank you. Raghu, would you like to add more to that?
No, I mean, that's it. I think Sumanas has covered everything.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so what would you, if you had to think about a message for other youngsters like you, what would be that message to them? And yeah, how would you like to kind of, if any last comments?
I think Raghu will start this time.
I don't know. I think we need to think out of the box. I mean, think how exactly everyday things that we do affects other people, and I mean that could be the start for everyone to kind of think on what they are doing and how they are supporting the community or the social life today. So they can start thinking in that manner and start exploring in their own. They don't have to leave their work and come out to make khadi or anything, right? So whatever they do, they can do it a better way. And so if they start looking into how they can manage their waste, how they can support works like khadi and other stuff, and in their own field, if they can kind of find out the sustainable way, that could be the start for every one of us. Like every other youngster who are going to be the future leaders, or who are going to influence the coming generations. So that could be the one. And yeah, I think challenging today what we have the social construct today is going to is the first thing that someone can start with, I think.
Uh, you also mentioned about design thinking. So you literally sat with people at Janapada Seva Trust, implementing the design thinking ways of, getting to better designs, both in machines and other things. Would you like to share a little bit about how it worked and what exactly it entailed?
I mean, more. I mean, it all comes with as we go along with anything. I mean, design thinking is mostly about trying to understand all of the parameters that going to play in particular designing of anything. It could be design of the machine, or it could be design of a process. So trying to understand all of the process, all of the parameters that going to affect that particular process is very important. And most of the times that when we design, I mean, nowadays the people who designs a machine or whatever they design, they just stay, I mean, they design it somewhere very far from where it actually works, and that huge gap is going to create huge problems. And that problems that we won't be able to see it unless and until if we physically be there and try to understand all of the parameter. And more than that, if you can do that work by yourself, so then you will be able to understand more of what it exactly the problem statement is, rather than just asking. And especially after this pandemic, we know that everything is done through this camera on the laptop, and that's going to put a lot of challenges for people like me for design thinking and stuff like that. But yeah, basically do it and hands-on, try to understand exactly what they are feeling, try to explore the problem statement from their point of view rather than in a point of view of a mechanic, for like an engineer or something. Why I would say that is because whenever you go to any engineers today and say, ask for a solution, they try directly jump to a technology or a machine or a software or an app on your phone. Right? You say, I have this problem I need to solve, I have this product needs to be converted into product B. What do I do? So first thing that we think of is making a machine, and put it into the machine. Product A will become product B. So rather than thinking like that, we could also think that it can be more than just technology that's going to solve that particular problem. It could be chemistry. If you can understand the basic chemistry of that particular problem statement you are going to deal with, if you're going to be able to solve that problem more easily, rather than, there could be a more easy solutions rather than technology. There could be someone asked me to say that you need to extract some kind of a dye from that particular raw material. I could say that I can make a boiler and then make a distillation and then make this thing and everything, rather than there could be a solution where you just put it and the dye might come out from it right away. This can only be done when you understand what the chemistry of it and how the people have been using it, what are all the problems it causes, or what are all the advantages it does. When you go and work in the field or with the people who use it, we'll understand all of these things. And that is one of the design thinking which needs to be adapted in everything that we do, irrespective of a technology or process or whatever it may be.
And for me, I just want to add on that, because a lot of times when we people, we think that we are the persons to solve the problems, so that itself sometimes becomes a problem. because the community itself, they have their own knowledge, and really need to sort of acknowledge that. Unless we do that, a lot of times a lot of our efforts will actually fails, because they do have ideas, they do have knowledge about how to go about different problems. So it's, I think, as something, as people like us, I think acknowledging that itself is something needs to be done.
Thank you. And other closing comments from any one of you, or one of you? We have another 2 minutes, few minutes.
Sumanas can do that.
Yeah, this is something I really enjoyed talking to you, especially for answering the interesting questions that came about. And but the last thing I wanted to say was that today as individuals, it's a high time for us to make this moral connections, and in every material practices that we do, it's very important to reconnect that with the moral obligations that we have with others. And I think that is the first step to make it a better world. So that is my closing comments. Yeah.
Thank you. So thanks both of you for that very fantastic presentation and conversation on what you all are trying, and to revive and keep Khadi going in our country. And on behalf of CFA and ESG, and on behalf of all my colleagues, I would like to thank both of you again. To the audience, please stay tuned. Thank you for participating in this webinar. We have our next webinar next Thursday, same time, and our next speaker is going to be talking about natural birth and what it is to move away from an institutional birth, and talking about the possibilities of home births and midwives and at birthing centers, and to be able to appreciate birthing itself in today's world. We have two speakers next week, Chetana Kulkarni and Mallige, who will be sharing their thoughts, and they will also be sharing about what is happening in the maternal health sector, especially among the poorer communities, where natural birth was a normal thing in the past, but now the challenges that they are facing. So thanks again, and good evening, and bye. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.